Mom, we just think it's for the best. You're not exactly financially responsible. We'll make sure Dad's money is managed properly. Those words from my daughter-in-law Chloe still echo in my head. I remember looking at my son, waiting for him to defend me. Instead, he just looked down at his hands. Managed? I asked. It's my husband's estate. It's mine. That's when my son finally looked up. Actually, we have power of attorney. It's already done. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just sat there in my own living room, staring at two people I'd loved my whole life, realizing I had just been erased. My name is Lauren and I'm 38 years old. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which in my family basically meant I was the one who never grew up. My husband Mark was a respected lawyer, and he was my biggest supporter. He loved that I saw color and shape where others saw blank space. He said my creativity was a gift. But after he passed, my son and his wife saw it differently. They saw a grieving woman in paint-stained jeans who worked from a tiny home office and probably couldn't balance a checkbook. I wasn't rich or glamorous like Chloe's family, but I had something they didn't expect. I had my husband's true story and a piece of paper they'd never seen. If you've ever been told you're too soft or not responsible enough to handle your own life, hit that subscribe button. I want to hear how you proved them wrong in the comments. Let's go. The week after Mark's funeral, the house felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. The smell of sympathy flowers was starting to turn sour. That's when my son and Chloe showed up with what they called help. They sat at my kitchen table with stacks of papers. Chloe kept patting my hand like I was made of glass. You just focus on healing, Lauren. We'll handle the legal stuff. It's what Dad would have wanted. My son nodded along. He wouldn't look me in the eye. I signed where they told me to sign. They said it was standard forms, nothing to worry about. I was too tired to fight, too broken to question. A month later, I got a notice from the bank. Our joint accounts were frozen. I called my son, confused. That's when I learned they'd used a limited power of attorney form, combined with my signature, to take full control of Mark's $200,000 estate. Every penny. Gone. What happened next was worse than the money. I got a call from my cousin asking why I wasn't at the family dinner at my son's house. I hadn't been invited. My cousin hesitated, then told me Chloe had said I was too emotional and would bring the mood down. They were painting me as unstable, unreliable, unsafe to be around. A few weeks later, I forced myself to attend a small gathering at my sister's place. Chloe was there, loud and glowing. She announced to everyone they'd used some of the money to put a down payment on a new car. It's what Dad would have wanted, she said, looking right at me, for us to be secure. People nodded. No one saw the theft. No one said a word. Then my son called, not to apologize, not to explain. He offered me a monthly allowance of $400. So we know you're not wasting it all, he said, like I was a child, like I was irresponsible. I told him no thank you very politely and hung up. What they didn't know was that I'd already started making calls. I remembered something. Mark was meticulous. He was old school. He trusted paper. A year before he died, on a rainy Tuesday night, he handed me a thick sealed envelope. The living room smelled like coffee and the leather of his favorite chair. Lauren, he said, if anything ever happens to me, don't open this unless you feel completely cornered. Give it to my old partner, David. For weeks, I'd been too proud to use it, too hurt. I wanted to believe my son would wake up and remember who raised him. But that allowance phone call broke something open in me. I went to my closet, dug out the envelope, and held it in my hands. What they didn't know, as they sat in their new car posting pictures of their home renovations, was that I was on my way to David's office. I had a plan I never saw coming, and it was written in my husband's own hand. David Thorne was Mark's law partner for over 20 years. His office smelled like old books and dust, exactly the way a lawyer's office should. He listened to everything, the accounts frozen, the uninvites, the car, the $400 allowance. He reviewed the documents I brought and his face went dark. He confirmed my son's actions were legally questionable but said fighting it in court would be expensive and take years. However, he said, reaching for the envelope. He opened it carefully like it was sacred. Inside was a letter from Mark to David along with a copy of his original will, not the one my son filed, the real one. It left everything to me, no conditions, no restrictions. And there was another letter, a personal one, Mark's handwriting, addressed to my son. David read it silently first, then looked up. He wants me to deliver this personally if his son ever tried to take advantage of you. Meanwhile, my son and Chloe grew bolder. Their social media filled with photos of new cabinets, new floors, new everything. They thought they'd won. I asked David to arrange a final meeting. I told my son I was ready to sign the allowance papers. They showed up at David's office looking smug, smelling like expensive perfume and confidence. Chloe carried a designer bag probably bought with my money. My son had a folder with the allowance agreement, ready to humiliate me one last time. "See, Mom," he said, sliding the papers across the table. "This is for the best. You sign this, you get your money every month. No more stress." I looked at him, really looked at him. Then I said, "I'm not signing anything." The door opened. David Thorne walked in. He introduced himself. Chloe's smile flickered and died. David calmly laid 2 documents on the table, the real will and the letter. "Before we go any further," David said, "I have a document here, signed and witnessed a year before Mark's death, that supersedes the paperwork you filed. It leaves everything without restriction to Lauren. Furthermore, I have a personal letter from your father to you." He picked up the letter and began to read aloud. Mark's voice through David's words. "If you are reading this, you have tried to take what is not yours. You have disrespected your mother. I am ashamed. David, please ensure she gets everything and that my son understands the weight of his actions." My son went white, like someone had drained all the blood from his body. Chloe started to argue, her voice sharp and desperate, but David cut her off. He explained calmly that their actions constituted fraud. He said unless they fully restored the estate within 48 hours, plus compensation for emotional distress and legal fees, he would file charges. The room was silent except for the sound of the clock on the wall. They returned the money, every penny plus more. They had to sell things to do it. The car, some of the renovations. My son and Chloe were left with debt and a family name that now meant something ugly. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I took a portion of the money and finally booked the art retreats in Italy that Mark and I always talked about. I sat in a small village, painting hillsides, and felt him with me. I didn't cut my son out completely. But the relationship is different now. It's on my terms. Mark didn't leave me money. He left me a shield. He knew I was strong enough to grieve, but he also made sure I didn't have to fight alone. The greatest gift he gave me wasn't $200,000. It was knowing he saw my strength, even when I couldn't see it myself. Has your trust ever been used against you by the people closest to you? Have you had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Subscribe and share your story in the comments. Let's remind each other that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Click hype to help this story reach others who need to know they're not alone in the fight. Thank you for watching. If my story touched you, a like would mean the world. To help others find this story, click hype. I always read the comments, so feel free to share a piece of your story with us.